I used to work a while ago in Sky, and throughout the years, I kept in touch with him. He's also my Scrum at Scale instructor. So thankfully, I'm a Scrum at Scale practitioner as well. So we will talk about that more later. So, Mohammed, whenever you're ready, you can begin, and I'll mute myself.
Thank you, Murtaza. I hope everybody can hear me and everybody's doing well, keeping well. Give me a thumbs up. You can use the controls, or you can just tell me, give me a hi. Yeah. So I know we are in times of COVID situation, and it's been really um, it's especially in the UK and in Europe. We've been in lockdown, and we all stuck with this virtual learning, and we had to adapt to all these new kind of environment. So I know this environment is what is going to be the future. We're going to start looking at more virtual learning and virtual sessions. So I want to welcome everybody for joining and taking time to attend this webinar. We were going to focus purely on building an agile release train with the context of understanding the Scaled Agile Framework, so SAFe 5.0. Now, before we begin, I'm just going to do a quick poll, and I just want to understand uh, what level of agile and scrum you've used and what's your level of experience, so it makes it easier for us to start understanding the questions, and start relating to the question, and I can answer them briefly, or if I need to explain in detail, then we can go in detail. I'm going to launch the first poll. I just want to understand where you stand, your experience in agile and scrum. Are you new to scrum? Have you got some experience? Have you worked in an environment or at the team level, or has it been more than 5-10 years of experience? Great, I can see a lot of a mix of people, mix of every experience. Great, good. Thank you for that. Thank you. Let's start. Right. Um, as you know, my name is Mohammed Rauter. So I've been in the IT industry for about 20 years, working from being a developer to a tester to building several applications around mobile and web technologies, and purely applying Scrum and some scaling frameworks as well. So recently, I've been working on Scaled Agile Framework for some of the clients across UK and Europe. So I just want to share some of the experiences. Plus, I want to share the experience of how you can actually build an agile train to start off with, and give you some basic principles or basic tips and how you can actually start going into that journey. Apart from that, I also do a lot of training. I teach a few of them. I consult and I train on Scrum at Scale and some of the SAFe enablements. My experience has been around the team level and the enterprise level. So if you have any questions around basics of Scrum, or if you have any questions around scaling aspects, so where you work with multiple teams across the organizations, please pose your questions and I'll be happy to answer them. Right. So today we're going to look at the Scaled Agile Framework. The screenshot that you see here is the big picture. So this is the big picture. This is the latest version that I've taken from Scaled Agile website. What you can see now is the essential version. So I'm just showing you one bit of it. It's not the entire stack. So there's about 3 layers. So we want to focus on the agile release train. So what is an agile release train? So we're just going to focus on the details about it and look at some of the roles around that. And there's a lot of things in this picture. So let's keep it simple. I want to make sure that you understand the essence of why we have an agile release train, and who and what are the roles of each of these environment. We'll try and understand. But what you see at the bottom here is purely the base, the core foundation of SAFe. So the core values, the lean agile mindset, the SAFe principles, So they are the basis, and they are the foundation of Scaled Agile Framework. So just like how you have Scrum, you have the Scrum values, you've got the Scrum, the Agile Manifesto, you've got all this list of things. So similarly, SAFe has a few principles and core values. Now let's start focusing on the Agile release train. What is an Agile release train? So most of you would have worked with single teams, with single Scrum teams, or you might have seen your organization started to expand, or as they start improving, or as they start adding more and more products, they start implementing more Scrum teams or more Agile teams. Now, when they start building this, these teams start talking to each other. Yeah, so they may have two or three teams building, one team serving the backend systems. So the other team could be doing some kind of a payment system. Yeah, and you may have another team that's purely working on providing core services, and you could have a setup like that. Now, this composition of teams that deliver value is nothing but is called the agile release train. It's like a team of teams. What we do in SAFe is it's purely a virtual organization, just like a startup company. So you have a large organization, but you want to implement SAFe, you go and start building this small set of teams. And these teams are nothing but a small startup. They are kind of a virtual organization. And the number of people you can have in that train is the recommended size is between 50 to 125 people. So it doesn't mean that you can have in one team. It's each team has its own composition. So the principle is about 5 to 11 people in each team. That's the recommended size of an agile team, and you can start building a network. So you could have 2, 3, 4, 5 teams, and this could build a big train. So just like how you when you go in a train, you see compartments in trains, right? You see compartments, and each compartment accommodates about 30 or 40 people. So similarly, your agile release train will have compartments. You can call them as teams, and each team comprises of 5 to 11 members. And this team goes through the entire continuous delivery pipeline. So where it enables you to start exploring the options of delivering value to your customers. Now, what is the goal of this ART? The ART is nothing but Agile Release Train. They have a goal, and this goal is coming from the program, or it could be from the organization. They have a vision, and they have a mission to kind of satisfy. Now, this team, this Agile Release Train, has certain goals, and they will start planning, and they can actually commit to the goal, and how we can actually develop and deploy. So develop is nothing but doing the actual work, and finally deployment is where your continuous delivery pipeline will help you in actually delivering that to different environments and then delivering it to your customer. So purely, it's kind of you have a strategy, you have a vision, you have something that you want to achieve, or you want to deliver value, and that value is translated and delivered by this ART. So that's their goal. That's their main goal. Now, when you organize this, there are certain rules and there are certain things that you may want to consider. Now, each organization works in a different way. If you're working in a hospital, the hospital has a certain kind of mechanism that goes through. For example, you may want to go into the hospital, and then it starts with checking in as a patient, or you may give your details, and then you go into the consultation room, and then you get a diagnosis takes place, and then you may and then you could be sent to a specialized section. It could be the X-ray department. It could be different areas, and then you may be admitted in the hospital, and from there it goes to the checkout. So this whole process is nothing but how the hospital kind of operates. So we call that as you can call that as a value stream, how a customer or how a patient travels from one section to the other section, or one portion to the other portion. Similarly, if you look at Amazon or if you look at any kind of application, the journey is pretty straightforward, right? So you go in, you add your items or you search for your items, and then you add the items, and and then it goes into your cart. Then your cart gives you displays the total value of the cart, and then you start looking at the checkout process. So this is again a kind of a value stream. Now, the value streams are a kind of the core bits that you may have to identify in your organization. So what are the value streams? What are the journey that your customer goes through is the first aspect that needs to be identified. And then you start building cross-functional teams, and that team starts delivering value. The continuous flow of value takes place. And towards the end is where your customer starts getting the benefit. And that's the whole cycle of this agile release train. Now, if you look at the screenshot, you can see that they have the liberty to start defining the new functionality, implementing it, and then deploying it and release and operate. So when I say deployment, they have the capability, they have the pipeline to start delivering the application into the environment that needs to go in. And also it could be a customer's environment. It could be production, it could be live environment that you want to deliver the application. So if you look at some of the organizations, we have this traditional kind of approach, right, where the agile teams are developing their application, but they have to wait for the DevOps team, or they have to wait for somebody else to deploy the application, and that's time consuming. That's the biggest challenge you face. So here we want the agile release train to actually be enabled from the start to finish to get to this process of continuous delivery process. Now, we spoke about value streams. Now, there are two value streams. One is the operational value stream, and there's a development value stream. The operational value streams are a series of journey that the patient would go through in a hospital, or when you go into a bank, or when you go into Amazon. You see a journey that takes place. But what happens within that? What are the underlying things is what is the solution, right? That's the solution that needs to be provided for this value stream to work, for the operational value stream to work. So your organization will start identifying people who are identifying the operational value streams, and then start looking at what are the underlying channels, or what are the underlying systems that enable this operational value stream. And then you start building or developing the value streams. And that when you identify the development value streams, so they could be a checkout process could be one system. Now that entire system has to be developed by the people working in your organization. It could be your developers, it could be your agile teams, it could be your agile release teams as well. So they all start working together to deliver solution, and that solution then goes into your customers, and they start gaining value out of that. Now, if you look at these, uh, have a look at the screenshot, you can see uh, the trigger that takes place, and there's a value. You can see this dollar symbol. Now, every trigger is an action. So from the start, when you log on to Amazon.com, you go in, you start adding items. That's one operation, and then you start sorting your items. You may add, remove. That's a different kind of an operation, and then towards the end, you're buying it. And that's the value what Amazon gets, because you've done a purchase. And for the customer, I'm getting the item and it's going to be delivered to my home. And when we look at the lead time is the time taken to actually start delivering value from your concept to the solution. And how soon can you deliver? That's important. You cannot make your customers wait for like 5 months or 3 months to deliver each feature, or deliver each epic, or each stream. So you have to ensure that your lead time, the action, that the time that you take to deliver is quick. And that's the whole point of being agile, right? The whole point of being agile is to deliver value and get faster feedback. And that's the scope, and that's the aim of most of the frameworks. If you look at any scaling frameworks, that's the aim of most of the frameworks. Now, once you've actually found the value stream. You've identified them. Scaled Agile Framework recommends different ways that you can actually set up the value stream. Now, if you look at the first screenshot, if you look at this one, you can see a multiple value streams are being delivered by one train. You can have a setup like that, or you could also have a single value stream and the train delivers value. A single train delivers value to it. So that's one kind of a setup. And if you go into a larger solution, you could have multiple trains. So you could have multiple trains, you can have different tracks, but they're all going to deliver the solution collectively. So if you're going from United Kingdom to Germany or to Dusseldorf, you are going to travel from, you're going to travel, you may have multiple tracks and you may have multiple trains that's going to take you there. And that's the value the train service is going to provide you. So you could have any kind of configuration that suits you and that enables you in your organization. Now, organizing around value. Before this, I just want to do a quick poll on, I just want to understand how, if you've used any scaled agile frameworks. So even if you've used any other framework, that's fine. If you've used Spotify, if you've used Scrum at Scale, if you've used anything, just let me know. Yeah. Right. And if you've used any framework, please use the chat window to actually type in the framework that you've used apart from Scaled Agile Framework. And it'll be interesting to know. Good. So we've got a mix of level of experience. So that's good. So if I can share the results, I can see that we have like 50%. Okay. Now, just another question on again on scaling or in terms of agile. Have you? I know a lot of you have used agile in your company. Has agile provided value? Has it worked in your company? Could you type that on your chat window, saying it's worked or it's partially worked? We are pretty much waterfall, or we are kind of mix of both. And the third thing would be saying it didn't work for us. It'd be good to know your viewpoints on that. Okay, I can see a lot of answers coming through. Good, very good. Right. So we looked at value streams. We looked at how the value streams can be set up. Now, SAFe recommends, in their principles, it recommends you to organize around value and also think about systems thinking. So you can organize a train around value. That's a key factor, right? That's the main thing. So what you see on the left hand side here is purely I'm just going to highlight this bit. So it's purely a hierarchical kind of a system. So you have complete silos. You have a business system, you've got the system engineering, you've got different areas. You're testing the QA. That's the biggest challenge, right? Most of the companies I've seen is you have some teams doing the work, but then the developers and testers, they don't collaborate. The testers are working on their own. So these kind of operations, and this is quite common. I've seen this kind of an issue, and I don't know if you've faced the same kind of issue in your company. What we recommend is to start building this teams with keeping in mind you get cross-functional kind of uh, expertise. So when I say cross-functional, get people from different areas. So you have a mix of business, you have a mix of architects, you have a mix of product management. You got a mix of everybody who becomes a part of this cross-functional agile teams, and they start becoming a part of your train. So organize around value and also think about this. Think about systems thinking. So that's one of the major aspects of building an agile release train. Apart from that, the the principle holds good for an agile team. So it is self-managing, it's self-organizing. They deliver value at the end of every iteration. So in when you work with multiple teams, it's the whole integration that takes place between the teams. So because it's not one team that's actually delivering value, so you may have 5 or 6 teams. They all integrate the piece of work, and that whole uh, integrated environment piece of work is actually is what is delivered at the end of each increment. So the one of the things uh, I wanted to mention was, if you're Scrum team or if you're following Kanban, that's fine. The choice is yours. The individual teams have their choice of framework they can choose. Um, so you could be based doing Kanban, you could be based doing Scrum, and you can have your agile practices. It could be XP, it could be pair programming. You can drive this through any kind of practices you feel. Recommended practices are TDD, BDD, and again, make sure that the teams are between 5 and 11. Anything beyond that will not work. If you have an agile team of 15, 20 members, then it's like having a big army of people, and then it's going to be really tough. It's going to be really tough to collaborate and deliver value. And one of the major goal of each of the teams is to deliver value at every iteration of sprint. This is a key area. Now, the roles within the agile release train, you have the RTE, it's called the release train engineer, who plays the chief scrum master. So when you have this network of teams, you need a specialist. You need somebody who can actually be a servant leader, and that role is played by the RTE. So release train engineer is nothing but the chief scrum master, and then you have the product management and the system architects. Now, the RTE's role is similar to the responsibilities are at the program level. It's kind of being a servant leader, facilitating the RTE events, facilitating the program events like the PI planning, the Scrum of Scrums, running the system demo. So there's and also the PI system demo. With the product management and the RTE, they work very close to each other. They because the product management owns the what, and the what is nothing but your backlog, right? So your vision, what are you building? That vision gets translated into your backlog, and that backlog goes into several teams. And your product management has the vision, and the RTE is responsible for the entire execution of the train. So the entire value, what is being delivered. And your system architects, they enable uh, the entire architectural runway. So what systems do we need, or what technology do we need? It could also be what's impacting the overall architecture. How can I actually start um, implementing new systems, and what are the enablers I can provide? So the system architectural team starts working on these factors. Now, if you look at the big picture, we spoke about the agile release train, and the RTE stands here. So let's just recap again. So if you look at this bit, this is a single Scrum team. So you have the Scrum Master, you've got the product owner, and you've got your team members. So that's your developers. And that's called an agile team. And they work on team backlogs. And if you look at this layer, this is more of the program layer. Now you have the program backlog, and this program backlog will have epics, will have features and everything. And that gets distributed across to the teams. So you may have 5, 6, or 7 feature teams, and all the teams will get the respective backlogs. And they start working towards the iteration goal, and that's satisfying the program goal. So what you see here is the business owner. Business owner is the stakeholder, and is responsible for the entire business outcome this train is going to provide. Now, the processes, as I mentioned, you can do Scrum, you can have Kanban, XP, it's not a problem. And this is your train. The train goes through this entire life cycle of PI planning. Yeah, that's called the program increment. And this PI can last between 8 to 12 weeks. So you've got ideally where I have implemented, we use about 5 sprints. You could go with the option of 4 PI iterations and then 1 innovation and planning, or you could do 5 and 1. So the combination depends on how you want to build. So you start with the PI planning, and then you go through this entire cycle. So each section is nothing but an increment, and you have an inspect and adapt that takes place towards the end of the PI, and then you go through your next PI. So you may have in a year you could do maybe 3 or 4 PIs if you go through the pattern of 4 or 5 weeks, five sprints. So that's like 2 weeks is a sprint. So you need about 10 to 12 weeks to finish one cycle. Right. So one of the things that's more you could say more practices that happens within the train is they plan together. Now you can see the Scrum teams here. This is one Scrum team. They've got a Scrum master and a product owner. You can see another one here. And all these teams, they plan together. They start going to the PI planning. It's called a program increment, which generally lasts for 2 days. But you can, if you're doing virtually, you could distribute that across to 3 days, because it's quite tedious. But once you get there, and once you've done with 1 or 2 PI plannings, it becomes a lot easier. So they all plan together, and they decide on a couple of things. So what's the PI objective, and what's the goal of the Scrum teams or the Agile teams to achieve that PI objective. Now, they also demo together. So at every iteration, when the integration takes place. So if you have team A, team B, team C, they all deliver value at the end of each sprint. So they have their own iteration review. That's or a sprint review within the team. But when you are combining, when you are working with multiple teams, you have to integrate everything together and do a system demo. And that's the demo where you start providing, or you start showing the feature that's been done. And you may have your stakeholders, you may have people from other business coming there and giving you feedback about your product. So you get a product feedback, and you also could get process feedback when you do your retrospective. So this cycle goes on for every iteration. And towards the end, you show the PI system demo. So that's the overall PI system demo. So what's been planned for this program increment and what the team has achieved, and you demo all the features. So one of the interesting things is a learning culture is also built there. So in your innovation and in the inspect and adapt, and also in the innovation and planning iteration, that's your final iteration, there's a scope for you to start learning things. So if you want to go do a hackathon, you want to do some sort of learning aspects for your teams or for the entire train, and they can be engaged. They can start organizing that. Now, this is the entire cycle of how an agile train starts is built, and how they actually plan together and deliver value. Um, and then the system starts. They start iterating. So iterating is nothing but sprinting. They all go through this process of iteration. Iteration 1, 2, 3, and goes on till 5. So remember that what you do within your iteration or your sprint is a simple sprint or Scrum values that applies, and it stays the same. And as you go into the program level, everything gets integrated, and then you'll have to start applying the program aspects. Okay, so if you were to start looking at applying or trying to implement something like this, where would you start? So you would start by identifying your value streams first, and then you go about defining the release train. So you need to know what are the operations and development value streams that is part of your organization. Once you've identified that, then it's pretty straightforward. Build the agile release train, start coordinating the launch dates, start coordinating the cadences. So remember, every team has to follow the similar cadence. So you cannot have one team doing 3-week sprint and the other team doing a 2-week sprint. It doesn't work. So try and bring everybody to be synchronized and get them to work with a 2-week iteration. And you could plan your PI for 4+1 sprints, or you could do 5+1. Yeah, that's about 12 weeks. There's also options where you could get specialists to train your ART leaders. So you could have that. So probably what SAFe recommends is the leading SAFe, and then specialized training for product managers and the Scrum Masters. But if your team has already got the knowledge of Scrum, and if they have the knowledge, then they can kickstart this immediately. And once you establish the agile teams, it's all about getting to that readiness check where you start building your program backlog, and then go through the whole iteration of refining it, starting a train, and then launch it. And that's the whole cycle where you can actually start going and implementing this. This is some of the points that I've mentioned, that where you can keep this as a reference, and then you can start your journey with the release train. You can also refer the implementation roadmap provided by Scaled Agile Framework. Now, if you're pretty much waterfall, then you'll have to use the starting point, go through this tipping point where you try to understand if your organization is ready to move into an agile environment. Are they ready or not? There could be a lot of resistance, but ensure that they are ready. And for that, you need leadership support. And it has to be driven through your leaders. So as you move, yes, we spoke today about identifying the value streams, and then you can start building your ARTs. And those value streams should be, first you start with the operational value stream and then the development value streams, and then you can organize your release train based on the factors that I've shown. You can create an implementation plan and then start launching your ART. And within that, you've got specialized roles. So this roadmap is available on the Scaled Agile Framework's website. So most of the resources that I've shown here is there on the Scaled Agile Framework website. You can start looking at that if you want to refer. There's more details about all these aspects. It's a good reference point for you to start learning about SAFe. And as I mentioned, you need to get leadership support and understand what are the products or solutions your organization is producing, or what's your vision, where you want to go, what do you want to achieve. And then your teams starts working collaboratively. That's very important. If there's no collaborative work, then the train is going to fail. If you're trying to implement an agile team and or agile framework, and then if within that you start implementing waterfallish approach, then there's going to be a lot of hindrances, there's going to be a lot of blockers, and it's going to significantly fail the entire train. You may have a lot of resistance when you kickstart things, and that's common for introducing agile or Scrum or any kind of framework, and this needs to be tackled. So try to do workshops. You can do get support from the leaders and let them drive these things. And if you're trying to be an RT or the Scrum Master, you need this entire support. Otherwise, this bubble will be there, but it'll just move away if you don't get enough support. Yeah. So let's go into some questions. So I can see there are a couple of questions on Mural board.
There's also some in the chat box as well.
Chat box.
So
yeah. Okay.
Let me go through some of the ones in the chat box.
Sure.
So Thomas, I'm sorry if I'm not saying your name properly, asked, can you give more examples how to sync multiple teams to work on same art? So I think you've covered some, but do you want to elaborate further?
Yes. So your question was about bringing in multiple ARTs
to synchronize on the same art.
So if you're trying to build multiple ARTs and for one value stream? Is that a question? So for one value stream, you want to have multiple ARTs. Is that the question you asked? Or do you want to have different ARTs working with different value streams and you want to coordinate them?
Thomas, you can unmute yourself. You guys can.
So yeah. So
Yeah.
Hi. My question is more related to how really to synchronize 3, 5, 6 teams together that really have shared vision and same idea, because usually this is not so easy.
Good question, Thomas. So one of the things you have to bring in place is, so an art that's the agile release trained has 5 or 6 or 7 teams within that. So each team is comprising of 5 to 11 members. Now this ART works on a product backlog. So that's the program, so the program backlog, and within the teams they have their own product backlog, which is, we can call them as a team backlog. Now all this comes from the products or services that the organization is actually trying to build, and that's the vision. It could be a service, it could be any kind of product that they want to achieve. Now when you want to align all these teams, the first challenge is to bring them together and try and give them the option of choosing which teams they want to work with, and also try and see if they are kind of like they are embracing agile. You can say if they are embracing this agile culture, if they have the mindset shift, does that take place? If all these groundwork, and if you have the support of leadership. Now the leadership needs to drive this whole aspect. They need to mention what is the vision and what is our goal to this that we want to achieve. If that doesn't come from the leader, and if it's only coming from somebody else, then it wouldn't work. So let there be a clear vision that's being conveyed, that's being aligned across the entire release train, and the whole release train needs to be committed to what we're trying to achieve. If that's missing, then there's a lot of things that you need to work within those teams in terms of mindset shift, in terms of what's the resistance. You want to try and see if you can tackle those resistance, and in terms of getting these new ways of working. So they may have resistance of not accepting the agile ways of working. They want to stay with the waterfallish approach. So there's quite a few challenges that comes in place. This is just having multiple teams within the art. But if you have multiple ARTs, so what I'm saying, you have one train that's going there, there's another train, and you want to deliver a large solution. So this happens at the portfolio level. Now that's another challenge. But you want these trains, each of these trains, to start interfacing with each other and start sharing information. So within one art, there's going to be cross-team dependencies, there's going to be cross-team coordination issues and problems, but then that is something you want to foster, you have to facilitate, you want to educate. It could be through training, through coaching, the team members, the RTs, the product managers, everybody into that agile culture. So that's one of the major things. This is, if you can drive this, then the change will happen progressively. So it's like it's an empirical change, right? It's you fail, you inspect, you adapt, you start looking at correcting yourself. So the teams will mature gradually.
Yeah, okay. So I will piggyback then the next question which I had.
Sure.
So I see danger, let's say, this broken telephone game, that on top level they decide something, then pass this information to the lower level, and then, it can come whatever outside as a result. And then the second is also the question on these PI meetings, which are 3-4 months, every 3-4 months, few days. And at the beginning, when you start with this one, everyone is enthusiastic, everyone
Yep.
is doing that, you have consultants, everyone is happy, no problems, and fine. But then second, third time, when you come to this PI meeting, it may come that some developers, developers want to work, not to sit on the meeting. So how you keep the team motivated on this kind of meetings, not only the Scrum Masters and product owners?
Definitely, that's a very, very good question, and it's a practical situation that you face in when you implement safe, and especially when you go to this PI planning for 2 to 3 days, you will have this kind of a situation. So, do I need to do a planning for 3 days or 2 days? What's going to happen? But there are benefits, and also one thing is the first PI planning is always chaotic. Yeah, there's going to be issues. There's going to be problems. There is going to be little understanding about the way this is going to work. Now, between first PI and the second PI, yeah, the understanding kind of matures. Now, you may want to encourage the teams to start inspecting and start looking at how we can improve the whole team level process, and also look at the program level process. Now that's where you have your inspect and adapt workshop that takes place just before you start the next PI. So where you can start addressing all the program level event problems, and start looking at resolving those issues, and how can you come up with a solution and start taking that as an improvement items in your next PI. So that could be a scope of improvement for the entire train. But within the 5 sprints or 5 iterations, each of the teams, when they are new agile teams, they have to start looking at their internal reviews, the internal retrospectives. They start looking at those aspects and start improvising every sprint. And there should be a lot of talking that takes place as well. Now, when you work in a network, the events like the Scrum of Scrums, the PO Sync, they're all opportunities for the teams to start flagging issues or flagging problems that's beyond their capacity to resolve. So that transparency needs to be built. And they have to make it more visible to the program. What are the issues? If the teams don't come up, then that team is lacking openness and courage, which is the basis of the Scrum values. So you have to work on those bases, the foundation. So having those values on the paper is different from trying to implement that within the teams. Is your team open enough? Is the environment open enough for you to start looking at addressing or making the issues visible? Do the teams have the courage to talk about it? What's failing? Can they talk about the failure aspects? And are they able to take feedback from the stakeholders, from the product owners, from everybody, to improve the product and the process? So that's where you have these touch points. Now, when you start working on all these aspects, that's when your team and your release train starts improvising. And yes, the other question was they could lose motivation. They could start it could become monotonous for them. It could be boring. But this is where you have to drive the vision and the goals, make it more exciting for the teams to understand that what you're delivering is of great value, and start measuring the happiness index. Every iteration, you can measure the happiness index of the team and the team of teams. So when your Scrum Masters, when all the Scrum Masters start meeting or catching up, they can do a scaled retro, where they will start talking about how we can improve the process. What are the things that will enable this entire team of teams to start working in this new environment? What are the areas I can focus on? And on the other side, your product as well. All the product owners will have conversations. They will refine the backlog. They will give visibility of what's new and what's changing, and what are the areas that we need to improve on in terms of the product. All this visibility needs to be given. And it makes it exciting when you have the leaders coming in at the PI planning and giving a talk about how important is it for this, for the organization to work on these products, what value we provide, and how is it going to satisfy the customers and the employees. So all these factors can actually bring in this engagement from the people, and that's important. If you need to work on the people, that's one of the things. If they lose focus, if they have lost inspiration, if they have lost motivation, the grassroots is do the happiness index, check on the happiness metrics, see where they stand, and then start from there.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Yeah. Should we go to the next question? Yeah.
There's actually a few more questions. Yes. So Maru just asked a question. Can you share a case study actually of how you have set up Arch before?
Yes, I could. Oops,
Your camera's not working, Mohammed.
sorry. I can. Okay, so yeah. I can definitely share a case study. I could, if you could drop an email to me, or if you could share that information, then I can show you a case study. I have to strip off all the details, and then we can talk about it. Yeah.
Okay. So the second question is, in planning events, do all teams involved in an art really have to sit together for 2 or 3 days? And
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. So this is yeah, is a big good question. Yeah, you have to be there for 2 days. But there are different things that takes place, different aspects of it. It's not about sitting there in a location and just listening to somebody. No, there are a lot of events that takes place within this 2 days. So you'll have your the leadership teams coming there and giving the importance of what we're building and what's the vision. And then you have the architects talking about the architectural runway and the changes that's going to happen within this whole service. And then you have team breakouts that takes place. So where the teams start working together and start breaking their program backlog into smaller stories and start navigating into different iterations. So, and then they go into to other events on the day with looking at the risk factors and all these things. So they are key participants. Now they are the ones who are going to do the job. And we want everybody to be actively to be there as part of this PI for 2 days. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, do you have any tips on how to facilitate it? Any best methods or practices?
So to facilitate each of those events that takes place within the PI day 1 and day 2, you could use team breakouts if you're using online. So what I generally use is breakout rooms, and I start changing the mode of doing retro and bring in different kind of formats. And if when you're doing your roaming technique, so when you're doing this risk, where you start analyzing what's been accepted, what's been omitted, and what's been mitigated, so you can look at driving that through Mural. You can do that in a different way using voting sessions. So make it more interesting. Try different templates. Try different formats. There's no hard and fast rule that you have to follow just the same kind of a pattern, but you can apply any kind of rules and any formats that you want to run through. But as long as your principle is and the mission and the vision is the same. Yeah.
Okay. And can you go over the last slide again? Someone missed out on something. Can you just quickly summarize the last slide?
Sure. Yeah, I'll do that. Should we go to the next question before I start sharing this? Yeah.
Sure. There are quite a few people that are asking for practical case studies, but I think you can privately message us your
yeah.
your email address. You can find Mohammed on LinkedIn, by the way, and message him directly if that's easier. And also, just a reminder to everybody that a this video will be uploaded on YouTube. How long roughly, Mohammed? How long does it usually take?
So yeah, within a week's time or within the next few
Weeks.
days, we'll upload this on YouTube. We have a channel called Efficient Agile, and it will also go onto our website, efficientagile.com. So I'll notify you once this is done. So this will be shared across LinkedIn. It will be shared in the meetup groups and the other channels where we had this registration. So I'll share the videos and yeah, and whatever information you need, please do email me, and I can share the details across.
Okay, so let's head to Muro. There's quite a few questions.
Yeah.
So the first two questions are similar. So how would you identify a value stream, and how frequently should it be revisited?
So there's a value stream workshop that you can do. You can start off with, if you don't have any value stream, it's good to do a value stream workshop. That goes typically between 2 to 3 days. And in an online environment, ideally 3 days. You start bringing in portfolio leaders, you start bringing in people, leadership teams, to start understanding what are the operational value streams and within your organization. So how it operates and how your product life cycle needs to go through. What are the steps? So you've got some canvases that you can use to identify, to record these things, and also once you define these operational value streams, now the next step is to find the divisions that can actually start channelizing or start producing solution to these things. Now, who are the people who's going to use it, and who's going to deliver a solution so that these operational value streams can be realized and can be delivered to the customer. So you'll have to start identifying the development value stream. So you start with the operation, then you start with the development value stream, and that's when your value streams get distributed. So it could be realized by a single train, it could be realized by multiple trains. So you could also have distributed environments. Trains, you could have trains in some team members in the UK, some in Germany, some in Switzerland. You could have a distributed environment, and they start working using the typical process that I mentioned today. So building an agile release train. So you build those trains, and they will start delivering incremental value every sprint and towards the end of every PI planning. Yeah.
Cool.
So we have someone who raised.
Yes. So yeah, regarding the value stream, right? Assuming we are delivering a value stream for a banking sector, for a bank. So for a bank, a customer comes in. It may be an online customer, or it may be a customer visiting the bank, or for some product, or from some service, right? So he's going to get some value out of that. So when we deliver a value stream, right? So that there are different kind of customers. So you will define a value stream based on you will differentiate the customer, or it's more in general. For example, a retail banking customer may be different, or a person visiting the CRM. I mean directly the bank may be different, or a corporate banking customer may be different, right? So the value stream at high level, if you see, yes, they're expecting a service or product. But if you get into the multiple levels, so if you go by the customer, or how we will do, if it's a customer, means then we'll have multiple trains, right? So that's what I want to understand.
So at the customer level, the type of customers, the personas you want to define should go into when your development value stream starts segregating into epics, features. So when you start doing that level, you start defining the different personas, the different people. So you said retail customer, it could be a credit card customer, it could be somebody who's a corporate, so it could be purely different types of customers or personal customers. So your goal is a banking customer. That's the high level you would define initially. The type of customers will differ based on what when you defined your user story journey or your feature journey, so you could define that at that level, because you want to reuse those operational value streams across different areas, right? You want to make sure that those components, those things that you build, are kind of they are utilized in different areas. So that's one thing you got to remember when you build a value stream. But below that is where you start building your customer centricity. You start doing design thinking. You start looking at personas. You start looking at who is this going to be satisfied to. Can I define a particular region or a particular kind of user? So I start looking at that aspect there.
Okay, thank you.
Someone asked, is product increment planning the same as sprint planning?
Okay, that's a very good question. So a product increment planning is not the same as a sprint planning, right? So the sprint planning is kind of is less than a few hours. So you may do it for 2 hours or 3 hours, provided your sprint backlog is refined really well. It's kept on par with, like, you understand everything. So you do it for 2 to 4 hours within the sprint. But your program increment is totally different. It goes through talking about the program, the whole vision, the mission, and then it goes through what are the architectural kind of changes that's happening, and then all the teams within the train start planning together. Yeah, so you have different breakout rooms where they start planning and they start looking into it. So this is it's totally different, because you also look at business owners coming there, and you have your events like you do management risks, you do roaming techniques, where you start looking at how you can manage those risks. And on day 2, you again do team breakouts. So it's totally different from a sprint planning. Yeah, sprint planning is a team level, so it's purely team backlogs. This is building the is looking at the more is at more high level. So your program backlog, and then that program backlogs gets translated into team backlogs.
Okay. So what are the best practices for setting up an art? Can you briefly explain or summarize?
Good, very, very good question. So some of the best practices. So from my experience, the first thing would be to identify the people, right? You identify you can do a readiness checklist. Yeah. So you've got your value streams, you want to build, or you want to have your train ready. So when you're trying to do this train or trying to build this cross-functional teams, try and understand the level of agile knowledge, or the level of expertise they have, and what skill sets you need to build that service or the product that train is going to deliver. You need people like that. So if it's a specialized service, you need to bring people like that. It could be architects, it could be architects from different areas to contribute to this train. Focus on building a cross-functional team. So when I say cross-functional, get expertise, developers, testers, test automation, and ensure that you have quality from the start. If you leave quality towards the end, then you're doing a mini waterfall approach, which won't work. So look at applying TDD, PDD, looking at XP practices, pair programming, and ensure that your each of the teams within that area are kind of writing unit level tests, and also automation tests that's making adding value to this train. And yeah, and apart from that, there's you can also look at how these teams reflect back on every iteration. Are they kind of being transparent enough to flag issues? Are they able to flag what's working, what's not working? So are they able to take those improvement items and start improvising? So yeah, you've got to work on all these aspects, and that's some of the tips I can give you. Yeah.
Okay.
Do we have any other questions? We are .4. Okay, yeah, we could take one more question, and then we could probably do. We could post those questions across. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay, well, someone did ask the question here actually.
Sure. On the chat window, yeah.
Let me. How to facilitate ARC synchronously, and do you share art metrics with the team?
So the art metrics is shared across to everybody. It's so when you do your system demo and when you do your program increment demo, and then you've got the inspect and adapt that takes place. So where you can you show the program predictability measure, then you show your program art measurement. That's very important because it's useful for the entire train and for the teams to know how they're performing. And you could also use reports. So you have Hive, Agile Hive, which I use in one of the clients' place. You can use that to look at your PI reports, and it's a very good tool to integrate if you're using Jira. It's a part of a Jira plugin, and use that in your Scrum of Scrums. Use that in the PO sync call. So it gives a lot of transparency how the team is performing. You can go to the level of looking at the program level, that's an art level, and then also the team level. You can look at all the reports. Any other questions, Murtaza?
Another question.
Yep.
But I'm not sure if you've covered it already. So, what are the steps to launch an agile train?
What are the steps to launch an agile train? So I think we went through this steps, and I think I can share the slide. So probably okay. Let me quickly again recap. So once you know that there's a value stream that needs to be realized. Okay, this value stream needs to provide some value. You look at building this agile release train. Now the agile release train comprises of a couple of Scrum teams or agile teams. Now these teams have a specific size of people you can have there, and they will be expertise in different areas. So we call them as cross-functional teams, and you can go between 5 to 11 members in each of these agile teams. But the whole size of the train, you can have between 50 to 125. But there's no hard and fast rule that you could have below 50. Even if you have 40, 45, you could do it. There's not a problem. It works. But the recommended size is 50 to 125, and you could build 5 or 6 teams in 5 or 6 teams, or maybe 8 teams in the network. And in that, you could have 3 or 4 teams working together, delivering a feature or a component value. So you could have a similar kind of setup across, but they all work towards delivering what the PI requires. So that's your PI objective. And apart from that, the principles are pretty straightforward. They are self-managing, self-organizing. Make sure that you have a proper program backlog, and it's well-defined, it's refined, it goes through the refinement process, it's prioritized, and it's ready for the teams to start playing in the PI planning. Yeah. So ensure maybe 1 or 2 sprints before the PI planning, you can expose or you can show what's coming in for the next PI increment. So make sure your train has the proper visibility of what's going into the program increment. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Will you be sharing the slides at all? Is this available for people to
yes, I could share. I'll probably do a slide deck, maybe a PDF, or yeah, we can do that. We can upload it.
And as we mentioned earlier, guys, this YouTube video will be available on YouTube. And if you check out Mohammed's LinkedIn post, or if you go on this website, efficientagile.com, you'll post videos there. And Mohammed, do you want to remind everybody about what the next webinar is going to be about and when it's going to be?
Sure. I think somebody's asked me to show the last slide, right? I'm gonna share that. But yes, I have a few topics in mind. I want to talk about the RTE, so the release train engineer. But if you have any specific topics that you want me to talk about in Scaled Agile Framework or any other frameworks, please let me know. I have another webinar that's coming on, that's happening on the 12th of February. And it's purely, that's going to be on Scrum at Scale. That's a different scaling framework. I'm going to talk about that, purely focusing on leadership teams. But if you want any specific topics on Scaled Agile frameworks or in SAFe or in Spotify or anything, please drop me an email or send me a message. We can do a topic. So I intend to do a webinar every 4 to 6 weeks. So we'll try to keep that cadence.
Okay.
Let me share the last slide. Sorry, somebody was asking this.
Just to quickly summarize, yeah.
Yeah. Is there any other questions that we want to focus on? Does anybody's asked any other questions we need to look at?
Guys, if you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand, or you can, I think you can unmute yourself as well.
I could speak. I'm sorry for not being very fit today, but I found it very interesting how people use this in practice, in terms of tactics or just any kind of experience or returns of experience about how it is to do this with real human beings. You know, the process and the methods is it never works exactly as on slides in reality.
That's very true. That's a very good question, and it's a valid question, because if you look at SAFe, it's heavy, it's highly prescriptive. Yeah, if you look at other frameworks, it's less prescriptive. Yeah, and it allows you to move or to implement the way you want, but provided the base and the foundation is still the same. Yeah. So if you look at Scrum at Scale, it talks about having or observing the culture, the environment, and everything. And if you look at Scaled Agile Framework, it gives you the similar kind of options, but it gives you detailed explanation of each and every aspects. Now, again, there is flexibility for you to apply this in your environment the way you want, but provided the principles and the basis are kind of followed. Yeah, because if you strip off a few things, now if I was going to use Scrum, the rule book tells me something, and the way I play it in my environment is a bit different, right? But the rule book says you need to have one Scrum Master, one product owner, and an optimal sized team, right? I can't have 20 people there. If I go into an environment and if I have 15 members in my Scrum team, if I just have one Scrum Master, and if I don't have a dedicated product owner, and if he's being shared across different areas, or he doesn't come into the team backlog refinement sessions, or doesn't come to my planning session, then that Scrum team is miserably going to fail. There's a lot of issues that takes place there. So how do we tackle that? That's where you start improvising. It's a lot of coaching that requires a little bit of education. It requires a little bit of mindset shift by the team members who are working there. So if you look at the scaling framework, like this, let me show you the last point that you wanted to see, the last slide, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I meant that as an interesting topic for future talks.
Yeah.
You know, even if it's more of a discussion round. Then,
Sure, we can do that. Definitely.
I find it very, very useful as practitioners to just talk about these topics and see.
Yeah, we can do that. We can have a coffee talk, or we can set up something like that. Yeah.
A lean coffee table.
Yeah, sure, definitely.
Mohammed, I have one request from my side.
Yes, who's Santosh, is that you?
Yes. Topic is even
I can't hear you clearly. Your voice is too low.
Right now I'm audible?
Yes. Yeah.
Actually, this topic is pretty much not associated with me, but it's associated with every activity in the organization. Whenever people are transferring the organization in Agile, that is the metrics, how effectively you can utilize the metrics, because there are many frameworks nowadays, they are claiming they are effective with Agile, like OKR, nowadays Scrum launched EVM. But in reality, if go in practice, we have hundreds of metrics in the market here and there, but which can be used in which instances in practical way, and how you can use in effective way to strategize your transformation. If you could cover someday this topic, so that will be a big help.
Definitely. So that's an interesting talk. Yeah, probably we focus more on the metrics and how it can be applied, right? Yeah, we'll look into that. Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
We'll work. Yeah, we could have some discussions. Maybe I can set up some lean coffee discussions for some of the topics, and we can gather and discuss these things. Definitely.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, Santosh. Thanks. There was a request to show. Was it the slide? Yeah.
No, it was the one just before questions. It was 4 circles overlapping.
Yeah.
It just, I think after that one.
Okay.
It was for like a Venn diagram.
Yes.
But is it just a kind of, how can I say?
So this is
brick?
Yeah, this is purely when you want to build your first art, right? So these are the few aspects that you want to consider, yeah, before you start doing your entire agile release train. So without leadership support, it's impossible. It's going to break. So you need to have enough leadership support and build your teams. As I mentioned, it should be collaborative teams, right? So you start fostering this collaborative culture, and you have to also talk about what are the products and how the vision is being translated into these products, and how are we going to deliver value to the customer. So we have to be really clear about this aspect. So that comes with a properly defined vision, and your stakeholders, your product managers, and everybody know exactly what is being produced at the end, and what's the kind of solution we're going to provide to the customer. And if you look at the significant program challenge or opportunities, when you start initializing this, there is going to be a lot of resistance, and that's the biggest challenge, right? Most of the agile teams, and when you start introducing agile, most companies face this problem. And the biggest challenge is the culture. So it's about people trying to adapt to the new ways of working. It's not easy. It's never easy. You can see that this will be the biggest problem that you face. It's about people. So how you can work with them, how do you motivate them and inspire them to actually think about these new ways of working, and are they able to adapt to it? Are they able to work towards collaborating with their team members within the team? Can they pair program? Can one developer work with another developer and start taking feedback? Do they have that kind of a culture, that kind of mindset? So as a Scrum Master, your role is just not to facilitate the events, but also to act as a coach, to empower the teams, to listen to them, to talk to them about things, create that environment for them to start raising issues. So at the team level, these are the factors that I actually apply in most of my teams. When I talk to them, when I discuss things, when I'm coaching them, it's a totally different thing, right? That when you coach and train, you have to ensure that you are listening and you can reflect on what they are saying. And that's when you can actually enable them to find a solution. If you give the solution, then the team members will go back to the old ways of working. So these factors are quite essential for you when you start a first art. And going deeper into each of these aspects, it's quite huge and vast. We can start talking about these things in the future sessions. So if we can discuss about how leadership teams can support this entire program, this entire area, what are their responsibilities? How do they have to behave in an environment? What are the areas that they need to start working on? It's not about sitting in the board meetings. It's not about just attending the board meetings. It's about driving that whole transformation, it's driving this entire vision. And that has to happen with leadership support.
Yeah, it's indeed, it's worth separate deep dives. Yes, thank you.
No problem.
I was jotting down some notes when you were explaining this, and I was thinking about also how do teams do cross budgeting and how do they do definition of metrics to evaluate the output of the agile release train in case it's a product, etc. All these are non-trivial topics to me.
And one of the things is the basic thing you got to remember is funding projects may not work. It should be funding value streams. So you'll have to start funding the value stream, start getting the fund for the entire value stream, so that you don't start picking people out of each project and removing them, and that becomes it creates an environment where it's totally unstable, right?
Yeah.
Somebody's working on a project and suddenly they are cherry picked, they're removed. Okay, you need to go to another project, and that's it. You lost a person. So you're not allowing the team members to stay within that environment.
Yeah.
So it's good to fund the value stream and build those guardrails. So this is where lean budgeting comes into picture. And so that's quite essential. Because I remember when I used to work with a lot of teams and when they start funding the projects, I can see that the developers don't stay for more than 2 months or 3 months. They kind of moved into different areas. So that isn't good for the team. Mm-hmm. So create stable teams. Building stable teams is very important. Small and stable teams.
Thank you.
Cool, no problems. Okay, right. Thank you, Murtaza. I think we should. It's 22. It's 7:22. What do we do? Yeah.
Okay, so thank you very much, guys, for attending. Thank you very much for your questions. It was very interesting. It seemed like many of us enjoyed it. So, as a reminder, Mohammed, one more time, when is your next webinar?
So my next webinar is going to be on Scrum at Scale. It's going to be focusing on the leadership teams. It's on 12th February, same time on a Friday, 6 p.m. It's going to be for 1 hour. So that's another scaling framework I'm going to talk about. And then we will plan future webinars in the next 3 to 4 weeks. Yeah. Thank you everybody for joining and for taking this time and staying back so late. Thanks everybody, and we will share the recordings and share the slides across to everybody. Yeah. In case you need any information, please feel free to email me, send me a text, or send me a message on LinkedIn, and I'll be happy to answer.
Thanks a million.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks. Good night. Thank you. Take care.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Mehmet and Murtaza. Well done. Congratulations. Really well presented. Nice one.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you then. Cheers. Bye.
Yes, bye-bye. Thank you, guys. Yeah. Was there any other questions we missed? Did we answer all the questions, right?
There one I didn't think was very clear, so I never asked. It was only one. Product management and same as product owner, and program backlog as same as product backlog.
Yeah.
They're two different.
Sure.
I knew that one.
Good. Okay. I think it's been.
That's everything else, yeah.